everyone, and welcome to a brand new show here on Your Daily Nerd that we are calling DM Tips and Newbie Tricks. I, of course, am Kyle Viveris from Your Daily Nerd. You might know me better if you're a fan of the Your Daily Dungeon. You might know me better as Amnon slash Zarbdock, the party warlock. I am joined by the co-hosts of this, Mr. Eric Stanford, who plays Mel the Wizard, and our wonderful DM, Ian Cassidy.
Sup, dudes? What's up?
So basically, the concept of this show is to be almost like a resource guide for somebody who is new to D&D, or is somebody who is trying to expand their knowledge of how to play, who is interested in being a DM, just like almost like a companion's guide to what we already have going with Your Daily Dungeon. So, obviously, Ian and Eric... Obviously, Ian, you are a DM for this campaign, but Eric, you're the one who got me into D&D in the first place, so I know you as in your DMing style a little bit from years past. So, I thought it would be great for all of us to kind of get together, and obviously, I know a little bit about how to play D&D. I've played a bit in the past, but I would say that of the people in the group, I'm probably the newest to it. So basically, I kind of wanted to do this show and talk through some of the aspects that maybe some new people don't know, or maybe clarify some points or some topics that aren't really like, okay, so what exactly is going on here? So basically, how we'll end up doing most of these shows is we'll come up with a topic for that show. This won't be a very consistent show. This will just be like an every now and then when we decide that this will be a good idea for us to do a video, and we'll have different topics going on. The topic for this week's show is leveling up, because it's very appropriate. Because everybody levels up. So I guess the first question that I have to ask you guys is, what is leveling up?
If you don't mind me speaking first, Eric, I guess I'll give you my idea, and then we'll let Eric go. Just to kind of preface all of this before I get into it, Eric and I both DM a lot in our side time, and I find that Eric and I probably DM more than we actually play characters. Is that right, Eric?
As of lately, not as much, but in general, yes. Like usually I'm running a game more so than I'm playing in one. But as of recently, I'm only running one game and I'm playing much more.
Yeah, I run about 3 to 4 games a week, and I'm in one, and that kind of jumbles around. But the reason I think Kyle asked Eric and I here is because not everyone is going to DM the same way, and not everyone's going to have tips and tricks that work for each other. And Eric and I, while we agree with each other on a lot of things, we also do things very differently at times, and we take a lot of inspiration from one another.
Getting back on top of it, I think leveling up, we both do that just a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm. I do a mixture, prefacing towards milestone, while Eric, do you actually use experience, correct?
I actually use experience, and it's very varied. It's not always like, yeah, when you kill things, you get XP. It's a mix of like, did you do something worthy of it this session? And usually combat, I will always give XP for, but like it's also like it's variation of like, did you talk to cool people? Did you do cool things? I mean, it's a mix of like, whatever I feel like is what the players deserve.
So, Kyle asked, "What is leveling? What is leveling up?" And my answer to you, Kyle, would be it is becoming more powerful. In layman's terms, your character is just getting stronger. But to break that down and get into detail, leveling up isn't always about getting stronger or your characters getting more experience. It's also about your character's influence in the world around them. As you level up, your character becomes more renowned in the area they're in. They become more well-respected, and their feats and deeds begin to gradually spread around them. And that's something to keep in mind, is that as you level up, your character's influence in the world around them increases or decreases proportionally to that. Would you agree, Eric?
Yes. I mean, it's like, you know, as your character, whomever you're playing and your group, as they go on adventures, they gain more renown. People start to know them, especially if they keep going back to like the same towns and villages and cities. People start to recognize them, and it can be a good and a bad thing depending on how your DM runs the game. But you know, as you get stronger and you complete more heroic tasks, it's like when you get to that point where you can slay a dragon, and you go out and you slay a dragon, and then you go back to town, you tell people, yeah, hey, slay the dragon. It's like it's more renowned. People start to realize, hey, these guys are the
Mhm.
real, you know, and it's that the reward for actually. I more see it's like, yeah, you didn't level because yeah, you level because you're getting stronger as a person, but it's like you're also becoming more of a established person in the world as well.
Kyle, let me assert this example to you of what leveling up is and something it relates to. And I actually like this a lot. I think I saw this on Reddit. Somebody compared this to it. The front page of the internet's actually a pretty great resource for D&D, I find. But in Hercules, he spends a long time training with the goat Phil, right?
Mm-hmm.
A long time, and he gets all these experiences, training, and he gets all all these skills. But when he goes to a town, no one knows anything about him, and they don't frankly care what he can and can't do. They don't care about who he is. So your character can spend all the time in the world at home and as much time as he wants to in his own backstory, being the ultimate badass that he is. But if you have no renown whatsoever, you essentially don't have any leveling experience whatsoever either. Like,
That's a really interesting way to put it. I actually had not thought about that. Like, obviously, y'all know that I play a lot of video games, and like leveling up in a video game is similar to what I think takes a lot of inspiration from D&D and other tabletop role playing games like this. So leveling up is not something that I'm completely new to, but I'd never really thought about it in the same capacity that y'all are explaining it right now. But I mean, it makes sense. Your level 1 character is not going to go do something that is not going to be world renowned enough to go do something that a level 15 character would do. Like you're probably not going to go slay a beholder as a level 1 character.
not unless that beholder is sickly and is asking you to put it out of its misery.
Exactly.
And just to kind of capstone this, unless Derek has anything else to say, the way I look at leveling is I put it into segments. Level 1, you're nobody. Level 5, you're a somebody. People know you.
Mm-hmm.
Level 10, you're an established adventurer. You've been doing this for a while. You might be associated with the guild. You might work for somebody who's of repute. You are somebody. Level 15, you're starting to become a folk hero. You're starting to become a legend. You're becoming something that is, going to be talked about a long time. And by the time you're level 20, you are the legend. You are the things people are talking about. You are the established lore of the world you're in. So few games ever get to level 20 because it's difficult to establish a lore that's, that carries that much longevity. But, nobody, somebody. Mm-hmm.
I thought about this example. You could think of like Luke Skywalker in Star Wars, like A New Hope, level 1 character, and then starts to go on his adventure, gains a bit of training. By the end of that movie, he's maybe level 3 at the highest. If you're trying to like estimate level types, then he goes to Dagobah, trains, and like all the rebels know him. That's his renown. All the rebels know him. He's a war hero. He destroyed the Death Star already. Then he goes to Dagobah, trains, gets to like level 5, thinks, yeah, I can take Darth Vader, goes, gets his ass
Yeah.
challenge rating 15. you know, but then like goes through more training, and then by Return of the Jedi, he can handle Darth Vader. He's like level 10, and then now you go to the Last Jedi, that's level 20 Luke Skywalker right there.
Right. Yeah. I think that does a good job of explaining what leveling up is. So I guess that leads me to my next topic and a little bit of on-screen work, as we're also doing, is what the steps are to leveling up. Recently, we just leveled up from level 2 to level 3 in-game. And so basically now what we're going to do is y'all are going to talk me through the steps of leveling up my character. I've done it once before already, but it's always nice to have somebody holding your hand through the process, like step by step.
Mm-hmm. So the actual process of leveling up, I find, is best to kind of break down into sections as to what your character should get and what they do. And I find the best way to do that is when you're looking at your character sheet, you want to cross-reference it immediately back to the player's handbook in your class. And if your subclass is in, another handbook, you'll want to go and also have that handbook prepared for you. Like, let's say, actually, a perfect example. This is Kyle's subclass he's playing. I know he's going to be going into Hexblade. Is that correct?
Correct. Well, I'm already in Hexblade.
Yeah. A lot of classes, Kyle, actually don't get their subclass benefits until level 3. Fighters, rangers, rogues, all those people don't get necessarily any subclass benefits at all until level 3. And that's actually a very common and unknown fact about subclasses. Clerics get stuff right out the gate at level 1. Just to show off to you guys what Xanathar's guide to everything is, this is what Kyle is using for his character. Hexblade is a warlock subclass added in November of 2017, I believe, right? That's when Xanathar came out, Eric?
I think so, yeah.
Yep.
Somewhere around there.
And let's see, I think Mordekainen's Tome of Knowledge or something like that. I forget what the name of it's called. It's coming out soon as well. Hopefully there'll be some more subclasses coming in with that book as well. I think it's just going to be a bunch of badass monsters is actually what I think it is.
Yeah. So the first thing that I do when I'm leveling up my character, Kyle, is the first thing is always HP.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's just like the most standard thing that I can think of. That's what everybody gets. That's exactly the same. It's not, the numbers aren't the same, but everybody gets like HP. So in this edition, you actually do have 2 options as far as how you can get HP. There's an average, so your hit dice is D8, correct?
Correct.
So the average HP is 5 plus your con modifier.
So it'd be +7 in my case.
+7, or you can roll, but
usually it's better to take the average.
Taking the average is actually in the player's handbook. Taking the average, they already put you above 50%.
I'll say this for that. There's a caveat to that. If you have a higher stacked Constitution bonus, it's definitely better just to take the average. Like if you have a +1 or a +2, it's pretty much better. If you have a +3 or anything higher for Constitution, take the average. You're going to be much better off as far as health goes than hoping to get that max roll. Right. But if you have a negative Constitution modifier for whatever reason, I don't know. Very few people do that. And for all the new players who are listening, I would highly advise against ever putting your Constitution in the negative. It's not only is it a difficult playstyle to do, but you are going to make yourself a target for DMs who are also new, because they're not going to translate that this person is trying to play a frail character. They're going to go like, look at this guy. I can nuke him in combat. They won't care. Yeah. It's something you have to get used to. Some DMs will preface combat.
I learned this the other day. If you have a higher, somebody explained this to me the other day, and I didn't really think about it until he told me. If your hit dice is larger, rolling for it actually decreases your odds of getting a better roll.
Well, yeah, because your percentage like directly goes up. It's like the difference between rolling 2d6 versus 1d12. You've got at minimum 2 and at most 12, whereas a d12 you've got at minimum 1 and at most 12. Yeah. So your possibilities on a larger die are going to always be worse because you have more options.
Yeah.
So just to kind of display this, and I'll try to describe it as well. Kyle's D8 that he's using to roll looks like this. It's a diamond-shaped dice, almost like with two pyramids stacked on top of each other. I believe that's actually called a rhombus. But that's the best way to describe it, is that it's two pyramids stacked atop one another. Kyle, when you level up and you choose to do this, typically the DM asks you to roll, but at level 1, and this is for everyone listening, at level 1 you take the max roll. You take max health. That's like the universal rule. I think even in Adventurers League and the official, like if you wanted to go into a card shop and play D&D with like 4 other people you don't know, you take max health at level 1.
I mean, it's even in the player's handbook. It's a hit points at level 1, like for Warlock, 8 plus your Constitution modifier.
Mm-hmm.
So they give you the high at level 1.
So let's go ahead and roll your health, Kyle.
I actually ended up. So do I need to, since I take the average one then?
Yeah, if you want to take the average, but feel free to.
Probably a better chance.
So the next thing that we want to address is proficiency bonus, because it's easy. It's stupidly easy, and it determines so much in this edition. And it's something you need to be aware of when to use it and when not to use it. And we're going to discuss that as well, even though it's an in-game mechanic, and we want to get into that much later in the video. Proficiency is important to leveling up because it determines a lot of what you're going to be doing later on in the game as well. You can find proficiency on any character table. Every class has the same proficiency bonus scaling, which is new to this edition. That was not the case in previous editions. We, I think, in 3.5 and just in playing third edition, you had base attack bonus, and we're not going to get into how that mechanic worked, but it was tough. It was very tough on classes.
Yeah, and there were 3 different charts for base attack.
Full quarter, or full 3/4 and half. But let's not confuse anybody. Proficiency bonus for level 3 is +2. Kyle, if you're looking at a player's handbook and you're on the Warlock page, which is page, I think, 107 in the book. Is that right, Eric?
Scrolling.
Huh? It's what?
It starts on 106.
Technically it's 106, yes. But the actual table for the page is on 107, right?
No, that's what I was saying. It's on 106.
Oh, wow. I'm using a PDF right now, and that's funny to me that it would be wrong. Very interesting. I wonder what makes the PDF different. Whatever. Very odd. So on that table, you'll see your list of levels in the first column, your proficiency bonus column, your class features listed in the third column, followed by cantrips, spells known, your spell slots, the level of those spells, and then invocations. And that's for warlocks only. Each class is going to have a unique class table and feature table, and it's going to be different. And we'll go over one other. We're going to go over a martial one, because just to kind of show how simple it is for now. But all spellcast.
We can go over Paladin. Since we have a Paladin in the group, we'll go over Paladin. I don't know what he's choosing as his archetype, but we'll just kind of go.
Yeah. So, Kyle, you'll notice that besides your proficiency bonus, it'll now include your level 3 feature. You will also want to add this in. That'll be the next. That's usually what I go to. Is I try to just knock out everything that I get on this table. I write it down, and then I go look for that later on in the book. I go find where that is in the actual page, because then I know what I'm looking for. I'm not like not going to look at the table, looking back down at the page, going back to the table, looking back down at the page, going back to the. I just write everything down that I get in one go, and then I go and define it.
Gotcha. So at level 3 for a warlock, my class feature is that I get a pact boon.
Correct. So for warlock players, this is a unique feature, and most people will get unique features, but like martial characters are going to be an exception to this. A lot of martial characters just share features because you're hitting stuff with blades or clubs or things like that. It's not particularly fancy, And do you have any comment on that, Eric? That might be different. I think barbarians get some funky stuff, but
I mean, barbarians, like, the only thing barbarians don't get that like paladins and fighters do is a fighting style. Don't think they get a fighting style.
Their fighting style is rage.
Yeah,
I would like to rage.
that is your fight. That is your fighting feature. All right, so let's go ahead and explain Pact Boon.
I know for warlocks, this is, basically, we said this before. Warlocks, they get their archetype at the beginning, at level 1. But this is actually like their second kind of big choice throughout, because they have 3 options, but they only get this once. They only get their pact boon once. So it's basically whatever they choose, they're stuck with for the rest of the game. So just choose whatever is going to be best for you. Now, I don't have Xanathars in front of me, but the 3 options in this book are Pact of, they're Pact of the Chain, Pact of the Blade, and Pact of the Tome.
I can reference while you explain what those things do. I can go check the reference on that. I don't think that you get any additional Pact boons in Xanathars. I'll check though.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure if you do or don't.
I don't think so either. I was looking at it earlier. I think you just get. I think there are bonuses for certain pact, depending on which pact you choose, based on the Hexblade class.
So go ahead and explain the different packs, Eric, and what they reward you with.
Okay. So Pact of the Chain. I kind of think the name is a bit weird for what you're getting, but basically it lets you get the Divine Familiar spell, which is a spell that I think only wizards and sorcerers have in their spell list. And familiars are pretty cool. Like, they can let you do pretty cool things, and you can basically summon an animal to be kind of like your companion. And it's not like they're super strong, but you can have them do really cool things like scout for you. And usually they can be really good at stealthing, depending on what you're trying to do with your familiar.
Some familiars are also really good at like battlefield awareness for you and can keep you from being like murdered in your sleep and so on and so forth. They have a multitude of uses. Like
having an owl to like fly ahead and look out for upcoming enemies on the road or something. And it does give you a few things with I think so with Pact of Chain, with Warlock, you actually get some different options that the other classes don't get. So you can choose, with the other classes like Owl, Snake, Raven, Hawk. I think those are just a few off the top of my head. But in this one, you get an Imp. I can never pronounce this right. This one,
Pseudo Dragon.
A Pseudo Dragon, a Closet, and a Spring. And those are just like really cool options. I in my opinion, I really like the Imp because he can cast invisibility on himself.
Yeah, the pseudo dragons is neat too. It's like having a little banshee from Avatar on your shoulder all the time.
Yeah.
We won't go into great detail on what those individual familiars do. You can see what they do in I think they're in the monster manual for one. I think they're actually just translated from the monster manuals. All they are. And if you really, really feel like you need to see it later, please ask us in the comments, and we'll go into detail about them in another video. Or I'd even be happy to respond to you through other means of communication as well to explain to you what they do and their uses as well.
Yeah,
Let's move on to Back to the Blade, if you want to, Eric.
Back to the Blade. Back to the Blade is your almost pure combat option. So if you are the type of player who's up in the mix, like you're a semi spellcaster as a warlock, but if you want to be, but you can wear armor. That's the cool part about warlocks. They can wear armor. So if you're up in the mix and you're wielding blades and stuff, Pact of the Blade might be for you. Let me see real quick.
So Kyle, for Hexblade, this is the most common boon that people choose because it complements your build so incredibly well.
Right. Yeah, I was reading over it.
You can, so with Pact of the Blade, it basically allows you to conjure any weapon you want off of the weapon chart, I believe. And it just acts as your weapon. So you're no longer forced to have just a single bound weapon.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that
Fishing in it, and the only stipulation.
I think that is the case, but as a Hexblade, which is your subclass, I think it adds proficiency with martial weapons, I believe.
I am, yes.
So, Kyle, you now have every weapon on the weapon table to conjure at your disposal, which is badass for one, because it gives you complete authority to do all kinds of things. Plus, Hexblade lets you use Charisma as your attack stat, so you can use, like, you can conjure a bow and arrow. Some DMs are going to be stingy with you and be like, no, you can conjure the bow, but the arrows aren't going to be there. And I tell that guy, you know what? Sit on a stick and spin, dude. I think it's badass. It's like conjure. If I want to have my player conjure some badass elemental arrows that he gets to describe what they look like, fuck yeah.
Cool. Yeah, and I was also reading a little bit.
I mean, and I guess in this particular case,
I was also reading a little bit in Xanathar. If I have the Pact of the Blade, then I also can, those weapons that I conjure with the Pact of the Blade also count towards my regular Hexblade feature. So if I am trying to hit somebody that has Hexblade's curse on it, it gets all the same benefits that my normal blade would actually too. So it's probably the way to go.
So basically, and this is how I would think of it, is that your patron has a favored weapon, and that's the weapon that you pledged your service to. And that might be, like, as a role-playing perspective, what your character uses primarily in combat. But you have the versatility to use any weapon you want to at any given moment for any situation for anything at all. And it means that when it comes to fighting monsters that have whenever that does come into the field, like as far as like physical, blunt, etc., you can ignore that. And then the second thing, and this is what the badass part about Pact of the Blade is, your weapon is treated as magical damage constantly. You overcome all magically resistant creatures as well. So like if they've got resistance to everything unless it's magical, you say like, well, that sucks for you because my blade is incorporeal and literally forged from the fires of the 9 realms of hell. But you know, that's your resistance is needed, I guess. That's cool.
Also, your weapons are considered magical, which are always nice.
I think I actually was like literally just explaining that.
I think you were. I was actually reading the next one. And I was like, oh yeah, let me say that because I was about to say that. I'm sorry.
Damn it, Eric.
But I can explain the next one now.
Yeah, go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, so the last one is Pact of the Tome. Now this one, I always like this one. This one was always my personal favorite because I used to never play spellcasters, because I just always thought they were too complicated, and then I started playing them, and I love it. So when I played a warlock, I was like, I'm going Pact of the Tome. This is the spellcasting one. It doesn't give you a whole lot, But
Can I make an assertion real quick? Can I interrupt you? To everyone listening, and to all those people who like to quote unquote main sorcerers and main warlock and main wizards, the idea of somebody playing warlock to specifically be a spellcaster is hilarious, and we're gonna get to why. We're gonna get to why, because warlocks are in a very important way handicapped, and it's okay. It really is okay, because they've got one spell that really just makes up for it, and it's a
that Eldritch Blast.
Trip at that.
Classes and I was like, Warlock. I've never played Warlock. I've played Wizards and stuff before, but I've never played Warlock. So this was like when we first switched to 5th edition, and I just went like as caster heavy as I could. But anyway, Pact of the Tome. So basically, this I really like it. You get a grimoire, which is called the Book of Shadows, and it lets you get 3 cantrips from any spell list. And that's awesome, because cantrips are always good to have more of, because they're unlimited casting. You don't have a slot to try to maintain to. You can just cast them as many times as you want. And you don't. I mean, I love cantrips, but and then it's like if as long as you have your book on you, you can cast those cantrips, and if they're not from the warlock spell list, doesn't matter. They're considered warlock spells.
Okay.
They're not based of any other stat but your charisma.
So let's get into the rest of the table for leveling up. We've really gotten into the detail of how to level up a warlock, and all spellcasters are going to have this much detail to them, because spellcasting is probably the most complex and detailed experience in D&D, because it needs to be. You have so many utility options with them that it needs to be very detailed. When we go through warlock, when we go through a martial class after this, it's going to be very simple, very straightforward, and very cut to the chase. So what we have left for for warlocks, excuse me, are the amount of cantrips they know, which doesn't change. And you can know this. Every spellcasting class will tell you how many cantrips your character class knows. These are spells that are free. You never have to actually relearn them to use them. You don't have to go and study them again. You can use them over and over and over again as much as you like. To my bane, prestidigitation falls into this. It's a fun spell. But
I mean, combat spells, you got Firebolt, Ray of Frost,
Eldritch Blast, Chill Touch, a variety of things. There's so many utilities in cantrips that are just quite fun to use.
Thaumaturgy.
Minion, always useful. Light is an extremely useful spell if you have people without dark vision in your party. I mean, cantrips are great utility spells, and if you ever run out of spell slots, you have combat spells for cantrip combat spells. So you're always useful in a fight.
Yeah, just be sure to build your cantrips one around, I think, first and foremost, around the character you're role playing. Spell, because you're role playing a certain way, that is your first decision and should always be. People who want to min-max and pick all the most efficient and combat effective spells and the most effective ways to get in and out of social situations, that's your prerogative and that's your playstyle. But number one rule is always pick a spell that you feel fits into the way you want to play your character. If that's combat or role play, that's up to you. So next, we have the actual spells you know. All other spellcasting classes would have leveled spells you know. And here is how I was explained to how spells work and in what way they function. Think of your spell slots, Kyle, as like beads or like grooves. And these grooves are so deep based on how powerful the spell is, right? First level spells are going to have a very thin groove, while like 9th level spells are going to be this deep reservoir that can fit this massive bead inside of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can place any level bead that is small in a larger slot. So if you want to take a first level spell and plop it into a 9th level slot, you can do that. If you want to cast Cure Wounds at 9th level, you're going to be throwing a lot of D8s. You can be throwing a fistful of D8s to heal somebody, but you can do it. You can take that smaller bead and drop it into a larger slot. You may not, and you will never take a larger spell, a spell from a larger slot, a bigger bead, and drop it into a more shallow groove. You cannot ever take Wish and put it in your first level spell slot.
Makes sense.
And in my games, you can never take Wish because everyone who uses Wish never. Yeah, the dragon can just behead you. No, it doesn't. You have cantrips, which are technically level 0 spells. I think they're actually, if you look at your character sheet, if you're looking at section, you'll see that there is a 0 there.
Mm-hmm.
That is, I can't actually tell if I'm showing it or not.
Ever stop.
There you go.
Yeah. So your level 0, that is actually cantrips. So if somebody or your DM refers to level 0 as cantrips, or cantrips as level 0 spells, that's what they are. There's no difference. You've got 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, all the way up to 9th level spells. And all spellcasters get, I think, and this is how I interpret the rules, you get some spells for free based off of your subclass. Is that correct, Eric? They don't count against your spell slots. They're pretty much always, it'll dictate to you that it does not count against your spells known.
Yeah, and I think, actually, you're going to get, Kyle, you are going to get some bonus spells for being 2nd level. I don't have Xanathars in front of me, so I won't know which one. But
he'll have Shield and Wrathful Smite, and then he'll have Blur and Branding Smite. Kyle, you can figure that out because it'll tell you what level caster you are. And this is the only time you'll ever see this directly stated for a casting class. Wizards and other classes won't tell you what your casting level is. You kind of have to figure it out, I believe. And you'll know what level caster you are based off of what spells you can cast. It's pretty straightforward. But in Wizards, in Warlocks, it will tell you are a 1st level caster. You are a 2nd level caster, and there's a reason why. And here's why it kind of sucks to be a Warlock. You cast every spell you know at the same spell level slot, no matter what. It will always be at X level casting that you are, which is where it kind of sucks because you get so few spells. I think at level 3, 4 different spells. Or you could be 4 of the same spell, I guess, if you're really inclined to throw the same spell 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
It would just be 4 different spells, and then you have the spell slots, which determine how many times you can cast any one of those 4 spells.
Yeah, because Warlocks can. Can Warlocks restudy and get their spells, get different spells when they kind of like? I know Divine casters.
When they level up, they can swap out spells.
But like characters like Wizards can just spend some time at the same level, to like they get the same spells and they can't ever change them out, right?
So yeah, so taking Mel for an example, like every time I level, I get 2 spells that add to my spell book. All right, so the Wizards, they have a spell book. That's what, and then every morning they get up and they memorize their spells for that day, and they can only memorize a certain amount. But that's where I keep all of my spells. So Wizards have that awesome ability. They know a ton of spells. They may not be able to cast a bunch of them in a day, but they know a lot of spells. But once you learn those 2 spells, every time you level, you learn those 2 spells. You can't ever trade them out. But Wizards can always add spells, even if they didn't level. There's ways to add spells into your spell book, and usually it just costs money and time.
Mm-hmm. And Warlocks are different. Warlocks, you get these spells that you are gifted upon from your patron. Your patron allows you to learn these spells, or you ask the patron to teach you the spell and you get it. And I don't believe you can trade them out until you level up, which is fine. It's not that terrible. But you're stuck with what you have, and you need to choose wisely. We're not going to go into detail on what the Warlock spellcasting, like what their different spells are. You can find those in chapter, I think, 7 of the Player's Handbook, spellcasting. I think it's chapter 7.
So you get
No, it's chapter 10.
Yeah. So Kyle, you get one extra spell known, and now you have a whole nother list to choose from. So you get 4. Yeah. You know 4 spells, and you can choose spells from the second level list. So you can any first spells that you have that you feel like I don't use this a lot, or I don't feel like this is useful anymore. You can get rid of it and put a different spell in it.
Alternatively, any first level spells that you keep and now cast from this point on are cast at this spell level. Every spell that you cast is going to be at second level now because you're a second level caster.
Okay, cool. So there's no okay, I'm going to cast Armor of Agathis at first level. It's all just I cast Armor of Agathis. That's it.
It's an improved version. Like basically any spells that you retain just improve over time now.
Cool. So basically,
if you want to,
basically on my sheet now, I could like move my total slots down to like the second level now, to each column.
Yeah, if you wanted to, you should probably still keep your first and second level spells separate so that you just know what spell list they're on. But if you wanted to put them on level 2, you can.
Oh no, I was talking like specifically like the number of slots I have, like moving them. Yeah.
Yeah. So next thing is invocations, which are unique to warlocks in that these are augmentations and or enhancements to either a spell, a passive ability that the warlock gains doing something else, or an increase in an ability on a spell. A very popular invocation is called Agonizing Blast, and it lets you add your charisma modifier as damage to any Eldritch Blast attack you make on somebody.
Which I took at the second level when we hit level 2.
Yeah, warlocks get invocations indicated on their character sheet on that table that we mentioned before. It'll tell you when you pick up an extra invocation. Invocations are very important to warlocks, and you should read them very carefully. They have an entire page dedicated to them, and I think actually warlocks get them added frequently in supplemental books as well. So whenever something comes out, you should take the time to read on what invocations you want. In the same way that the martial fighter, if you're playing Battlemaster and they can pick up extra martial maneuvers, you want to read what you're picking up. They can be complex and they can do a lot of different things. Just to mention a few, like something as simple as Beguiling Influence gives you extra skills. You get proficiency in extra skills. But then you'll get something like Book of Ancient Secrets, and you can only take it for a certain pact that you've accepted. You can't. Let's see. So something that only Kyle could take, because he's probably going to take Pact of the Blade, I imagine. What's a good Pact of the Blade one? Thirsting Blade. You can attack with your pack weapon twice instead of once when you take the attack action. Yeah. He basically becomes a martial class. He gets extra attack basically once.
And that goes into the prerequisites, which I was about to mention. But not all of them, but a lot of the Eldritch invocations have prerequisites. So you have to. It'll have regulations to it. Most of them are you have to be this level. So like he was just mentioning Thirsting Blade, that you can't get that till level 5. And there's actually the reason for that is because all martial classes get their extra attack at level 5.
All right. So Kyle, is there anything that we do as leveling up to level 3 goes? Do you feel like we've covered everything and you could probably level your character up without having to have us explain it again? The only other thing that I need to mention would probably be level 4, level 8, level 12, etc., etc. And we're going to touch on that real quickly after this.
I believe so. I think I'm good. I think really all I have to do now on my own is now go and pick out what I want, my next spell I'm adding.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's that. Yeah, I think that's all covered now.
Mm-hmm. We didn't talk about.
I was going to say, beginning in the next episode of Your Day of the Dungeon, Kyle, you can let us know what spells you.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, we did not talk about this. Other spellcasting classes, wizards and sorcerers, are going to have more spells that they actually learn, and you have to go back and select your additional spells the same way that warlocks would. But you're going to get more spells than warlocks will, and it's going to take some more time, and you need to read through them carefully because the same way Eldritch Invocations work, spells have a lot of implications and uses, and you need to build them around your play style. So let's see. We covered proficiency bonus. Skills don't work this way anymore. You only get them every now and then. Let's talk about level 4 real quick. If you were to level up, you'd obviously do everything we just did. You get that roll. You check your proficiency bonus because it goes up, and you would check to make sure anything else would happen, like features and traits that you would be adding, etc., etc. At level 4, level 8, level 12, level 16, level 19, I think you get it in 19 instead of 20. And then fighters get them at odd intervals, so be aware of that if you're leveling up your character. You can pick up either an ability score bonus or a feat. And ability score bonuses, you get 2 points to spend, and you can dump them into one ability score, or you can split them up and put 1 point into scores. Those are the only options you have as far as like ability scores. So a lot of people like to prep ability scores at level 1 when you're making and building your class, and a lot of people like to prep ability scores when you get there so that you can level them up later. This is an option, and you cannot raise your ability score any higher than 20 without having something that specifically lets you not do that. Some feats say like this increases your skill cap permanently, and some items in game let you increase your ability score cap permanently. Feats are found, I believe, in Chapter 6, customization options. There's a great deal of them, and we're not going to go through them today. That's a whole nother video. It is a whole nother video, a whole nother ballgame of talking about the best feats. We would do a top 5 best feats in D&D, and this is an opinion thing. And then the bottom 5 worst feats in 5th edition. This is the thing. And Xanathar's here adds a whole bunch of extra feats called racial feats. You can pick feats based off of your race now from Xanathar's, and they're awesome. There's a huge variety that got added. And then Unearthed Arcana, Wizard puts out a variety of feats every now and then for people to play test. That's all Unearthed Arcana is. You can Google Wizards of the Coast Unearthed Arcana, and it'll take you straight to the website, and you'll have extra things like that.
Those are not
official.
They're not official.
They're playtest. Like I said, they were playtest.
Yeah, playtest. So you can, if you go do it eventually, you can't pull out any of those Unearthed Arcana.
Without the dungeon master's consent, and if he's playing Adventure League, he'll tell you like, "Yeah, I consent to you getting the shit off my table."
Yeah. So actually, talking about dungeon master consent. Now, one thing, especially if you're a new player, or even if you're not a new player, playing with a new DM, feats are an optional rule. So always check with your dungeon master to make sure it's okay. If you want to take a feat, make sure it's okay that you do take one, because some dungeon masters might be like, no, we're not going to play with it.
Here's the deal with that also. A lot of people who are just starting to playing D&D, you're playing at level 1. There's only one way to get feats at level 1 unless your DM is handing them out like candy. Yeah. And it's if you're playing a human, and a variant one at that. Variant humans get a feat at level 1, and it's an excellent way to play the game. You get an optimization ability right at the start, and you can do things like that just really open up the game to you doing new and crazier builds. I would strongly recommend you speak to your dungeon master before playing a variant feat human if you're brand new at the game. Feats complicate the game. They do. I mean, there's a feat that I personally have permanently banned in my games because I think it really rewrites the ability to play the game, and it lets the player determine things that I think the dungeon master should only have the ability to do so. And it's re-rolling. He can re-roll whenever he wants to, and I think that's not how the game should work. It's a personal opinion. I don't like having a player dictate to me the flow of my game.
Now, and also, I think you and me, Ian, we do play with.
Yeah, I like feats a lot. I think feats are a lot of fun, and it creates a lot of versatility. So my thing is that, like, if I can do it, my players can do it. That's my deal. It's like I will never put lucky on on one of my monsters. I will never make another player lose an AC fight because somebody ties. Like if my character is being attacked and I roll a tie on their AC, I don't. I do a +1 on AC basically. I make it harder to be hit. That's just how I like the game. It's a house rule, and I make sure it's understood. And as new players, that's part of leveling up as well. Is that sometimes DMs have house rules on leveling. Ask.
Yeah. Ask a lot of questions. Don't. New players. I mean, this goes for experienced players too. Playing with different DM. Like always ask your DM. Like if you're like, this is just how I want to build my character. Ask them. Make sure it's okay, because we don't want to step on their toes. And if they seem not okay about it, but they're willing to let you do it, be thankful. If they're allowing you to play against their rules, that's something that you should be pretty thankful for. But yeah, talk to your DM about any rules, like anything that you want to. Just talk to your DM. Make sure it's okay.
So let's move on real quick, and let's just kind of gloss over real briefly martial classes. Let's do. I guess what's the most popular martial class? Fighters, because it's just so easy to customize it.
I think I said we could do paladin, but
we could.
Fighter's a lot easier.
Yeah. So it works the same way. If you flip to what page is it, Eric, in your book? My PDF says it's 72, so it's probably different.
Let's see.
It's probably in the 70s.
Oh wait, hold up. I can't.
I own a copy of the Player's Handbook, by the way. It's just not. I didn't bother to bring it with me over here for whatever reason. It's in my room somewhere.
What page it was on?
72.
71. Well, it starts on 70, but the chart's on 71.
Interesting.
I think there's a random blank page in there somewhere.
Probably. So, fighters, let's just go down to level 3 fighter, because it's the same fundamental steps. You will look at this character chart and see how infinitely simpler it is compared to wizards. You have no spells. You have basically this is your character sheet. This is what you need to know about a fighter. Is everything on this page. Whereas wizards, they've got this back here. And that's just how it is. So, fighters get a couple different things, and I would just write everything down that you see on this page when you're leveling up your character. If you're starting off at level 1, you're level 1. You have a proficiency bonus of 2. Your health is 10 because that's the hit dice, and it's mentioned at the start of your character. And your proficiency bonus, like I said, is 2, and then you get 2 abilities: your fighting style, and then second wind. And we'll get into what those are in a second. The fastest and easiest way to make a quick build character is to look at the class features and then look at equipment, starting equipment. Everything you need to know on how to quickly build a character is there. It tells you what your health is, how much life you get at level 1, and then it tells you what your proficiencies are, which lets you know, like, I can do these things. This is what this character is proficient with. And you should also read the quick build section. It tells you can make a fighter quickly by following these suggestions. First, make strength or dexterity your highest ability score, depending on whether you want to focus on melee or archery for finesse weapon. Your next highest score should be constitution or intelligence if you plan to adopt the Eldritch Knight martial archetype. Second, choose the soldier background. So what this means is that they're telling you, if you want to play a melee character, build strength or dex high. If you want to be hardy in combat, build constitution. But if you also want to be able to cast some spells, which is a subclass that fighters get, make intelligence. And you should always build your scores to reflect how you want to roleplay, and then build them based off of how you want to fight. That's my opinion. is that build on how you want to play your character. So fighters get what, Eric? You want to go through the different abilities to get up to level 3?
Yeah. So first thing, okay. So first thing that you get is fighting style. This is what you as a fighter. That's what I feel, at least, because this I mean, that's exactly what it says. It's the style in which you fight with. So what do you want to do? Do you want to have a bow and be like super archery type? Well, take the archery fighting style. +2 attack, on all attack rolls with ranged weapons. You want to be super tanky, defense, +1 AC. Dueling, yeah, that's the dual wielding one. It gives you, right?
You get basically it's for using a sword and board, or for using just one weapon. As long as you don't have as long as you don't have a weapon in your offhand, you get bonuses.
So basically, it's +2 on damage roll. You have one weapon in one of your hands. So, and then you want to wield a big giant axe or a big giant sword, two-handed weapon, great weapon fighting. Let you roll 1s or 2s on damage rolls. Protection, that's really good if you are trying to be the protector of everybody else. So let's say I don't think he took with this one, but Don's character, Dar, he taken the fighting style and say Kyle's run fight standing next to him, and the enemy standing in front of the Dar sees the Warlock a lot squishier, goes to attack him. Well, he can use his Dar can use bonus action to defend him, and basically, I think he has to be using a shield. And but basically impose disadvantage on people against him. So really good for protecting your allies and fighting. And then two weapon fighting. That one's the dual wielding one. Basically, you get to use your damage modifier on your offense.
Additionally, and I'm going to mention one feat here because it goes in hand with that. Hand in hand. It's there is a feat for dual wielding. I think it's called dual wielding, where basically you can do. I think you could wield another equally sized weapon in your left hand, and you get an extra bonus to AC. It's like you're carrying half a shield basically, and you get the heavy weapon. It's like a +1 to AC. You could use like a long sword or a rapier as opposed to having to use a light weapon in your left hand. I think it finds you to using daggers, short swords, and weapons of that nature in your offhand to fight with. If you just take 2 weapon fighting, but if you take dual wielder, you can carry 2 swords with you. If your DM is feeling particularly generous, and he thinks that having ridiculous strength allows you to, he might even let you wield 2 two-handed weapons. I've seen it.
Yeah, maybe if you're playing a Goliath, but who knows? Yeah, who knows?
I've seen some DMs say like, well, it says that you can treat when you're carrying things as if you're a size larger, you're carrying your swords, and I'm like, okay.
Dang.
Calm down. let's not get carried away.
Yeah, the next thing you get second win basically. I think it's a bonus action
to heal yourself or your dice plus your level.
You get to roll 1 hit dice, one of your hit dice plus your fighter level to regain hit points, which is really good in combat if you're low in health and you're just trying to get through the fight, get to the end. You can just second win, get a little bit more health, but you can't get that back until a short or long rest. Now, this is I think, one of the best things about fighters. Second level, you get action surge. Basically, you get 1 action surge. You get more. Yeah, you get more as you level up. But gives you a whole another action in combat. So you can use that other extra action to attack. You can use that extra action to basically attack and then say, I'm going to action surge, and then I'm just going to disengage. I'm going to get out of it.
I want to add an addendum to this. I don't know if the players, because they released an errata that kind of edited the way some of the wording went in the first edition handbook. And this is good information for you too, Kyle. Is that action surge is interpreted differently by DMs, and it will be if they're just reading just as read. Some people go like, it just lets you attack again. It just lets you move again. While some people say like, you get your full action one more time.
Gotcha.
And I have personally started allowing the whole action again because I like it. It's a cool class feature. It's game changing, and I think that's what class features are all about. Is that it's if you want to use that one off ability right now or that two off ability, you get it twice at later levels. It's game changing. It's meant to be a big deal.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
So after this, I think we have what subclasses, right, Eric?
Yep. So then you get to level 3, which now this is most classes type. This one's called the martial archetype. In the regular player handbook, obviously Xanathar are going to have more. I think Sword Coast Adventures Guide has some. I'm not entirely sure. But in the basic player's handbook, you have the three options are Battle Master. I'm not going to go into depth with them, but basically you get these really cool things called maneuvers, which allow you to do some pretty cool things in combat, like, parry.
Tripping.
It just adds a little bit, a lot of variety to your attack action. Then there's, I skipped one, but Champion, which basically if you want to play a super, super simple character, that's the way to go. It's very effective, but it is, in my opinion, it's kind of boring to play, but it is super effective at what it is. It's, improved critical.
Extra fighting styles.
Yeah, extra fighting styles. It's really simple, very straightforward. But
I think it's a late game build. Actually, I think it gets really explosive late game.
Yeah, but basically it's go up, swing a sword. That's swing a sword. That's what.
And then there's probably one of the coolest, but also slightly most complex subclasses in the game, Eldritch Knight, which is basically like, hey, you like hitting shit with a sword? We've got that. Hey, you like hitting shit with a sword, but then blasting it with a fucking spell? We got that. Hey, you like doing that at the same time? You can do that. Hey, you want to throw your weapon like a boomerang and then instantly summon it back to your hands? You can do that. You want to make your weapon in a different plane of existence and then summon it to your hands? You can do that. It's a really cool class, and it effectively makes you a spell sword. And it's like Warlock in a lot of ways, and a lot of people would argue that it's better at what Warlock wants to be. And I think it's just fundamentally different. It prefaces still being a fighter more.
Yes.
And you get a lot of damage spells, and you get a lot of very, very mild utility spells, but you're still a fighter. Whereas Warlock feels like you have some more spellcasting utility, and your cantrip is hands down better, and that's in my opinion better than anything that any of the cantrips that you're going to get. Firebolt is great. It's I think the highest damage cantrip in the game for single target damage. Eldritch Blast can be either single target or multiple target because you can target multiple enemies, while Firebolt you cannot. It's just a 1d10, 2d10, 3d10, this piece of shit right in front of me. Whereas Eldritch Blast is like, oh look, there's a group of guys I can just hit with a bunch of d10s, or fuck this one guy in particular with 3 different attacks.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
I've actually... That's something weird. I've actually never played an Eldritch Knight, but I've seen them. They are really strong. They're really good at what they do. I mean, like, being able to cast spells in this game is very powerful.
It's always been. It's always been.
Does not mean that you have to, because playing a barbarian is fantastic. So let me just say that.
Yeah. So I believe that we have touched on basically everything. Actually, the only thing I want to mention is that fighters get at like 6th and 9th or something like that, and following levels, they get extra ability score improvements and extra feats if you want, if the DM rules it that way. I'm very okay with fighters getting extra feats to say, and instead of getting an ability score bonus, meaning fighters could get extra feats. So like that's kind of how they were in the past. So it's like if you really want to like load your fighter up with feats, which isn't necessary in this edition, you can.
Yeah, I mean, fighter in this edition. Being a person that's played older editions, fighter in this edition is way more versatile, way more in depth, and way like a lot more fun.
It is the cookie cutter of many shapes and sizes. Is really what it is. You can play so much, and then in Xanathars they add a bunch of new stuff that's awesome and looks very interesting. And I'm excited to see how it turns out. So Kyle, what else would you like us to discuss and talk about as far as leveling up goes? Anything that we did not cover that you'd like us to?
Yeah, so I think the next part, as part of this segment of the show, I wanted to ask you guys, as DMs, what are the merits to the different types of leveling? You know, is it like what are the pros and cons of milestone-based leveling versus experience point-based leveling?
So, and this is going to be, I actually think this is probably a pretty short topic because it's pretty cut and dry. It's a matter of preference at the end of the day. Like, straight up, it's a matter of preference. The merits to one or the other, you can make an argument if one's better than the other all you want to, but at the end of the day, I think it's a matter of preference. Some people like XP, some people like merit-based stuff, some people like milestones. It's 100% how your DM wants to roll with it.
Yep.
You really, yeah, I mean.
So I guess pros and cons. So like, okay, yeah, we touched on this right before here. You know, Ian uses more milestone and I guess merit based, but more so milestone XP. I do actual XP. Like at the end of the session, I tell you get this much XP, and you determine when you level up. You know, basically, I don't have to keep track of it. And the reason I do that is more so for the player's sake, because they're not reliant on me saying, "Oh, hey, it's been 5 or 6 sessions. Y'all should probably be the next level by now. Y'all should probably be level 5." I don't have to worry about that. I'll just be like, at the end of the session, yeah, here's 1,000 experience each, and then I might give bonus XP. I'll be like, hey, you did this really cool thing. Here's 200 experience. So you might have somebody who's like, hey, I leveled up. But it's one of those things where it's like, it's a reward for that player because they did that cool thing. But it's also, y'all are in charge, keeping track of y'all's characters. And if y'all don't remember to level yourselves up, it's not on me.
Mm-hmm.
So I put it in the players' hands, and my players are really about it. All the players that I've ever played with, at least, they keep track of it themselves, of when their next level's coming, how far away it is, and they can. And then it's like, oh, hey, I'm really close to level 5. Let me see what my options are, and they'll look at it in advance, and kind of pick what they want to do.
Right.
I think. Go ahead, Kyle. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I remember in the campaign that Eric DM'd that I was in, like when I was still a new guy. Our party's sorcerer actually got hit at one point with an attack that caused him to lose a ton of experience points and go down a level.
I don't think that's a thing anymore.
It's not a thing back in 3.5.
Yeah, we were playing 3.5.
Yeah, he got hit by and they have their attacks have level 3, and he went down to level 1. It was pretty fun.
If you want to hear about the pros to milestone, it's simpler. You don't have to worry about experience points. Your DM tells you when to level up. He has all the control over it. I think it's really good for people who are disinterested in combat statistics and XP. If you don't care how much monsters are worth, you care about the characters doing things to get levels. Like you want your characters to accomplish missions instead of dicking around doing side stuff. Make it milestone based. I know for this particular campaign we're doing, it's milestone based because I want the players to do the main quest when they want to level up, and I want them to explore the world when they want to get things. That's just how the campaign's going right now. Is that if you guys want to do side stuff, you're going to get extra stuff, but you're not going to really get any kind of XP that warrants me leveling you up. This past session, you did something that is mildly attached to the main story, so you're going to be level 3 for the next episode that we release. I can't remember what episode that's going to be off the top of my head. For those of you who are not watching this video in order,
I guess if you're still watching at this point, just as a side note, that this video should be coming out before the next episode releases. So episode 7 should see the conclusion of the
combat.
It's the combat basically. So that'll be coming out this Friday. So you should. So this video is happening post that recording. So this is a glimpse of the future.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
isn't it sad that Dijo dies?
Oh yeah.
Not at all.
Hell wasn't that.
All right. Well,
actually, before we get off, what think of any cons about Milestone? I can think of a few cons with XP.
It's people like knowing where they are, and I think that's the biggest one. Is that without any way to track of where somebody is, the DM is completely determinate on when you level up, and people want to know where they are. And if your DM is forgetful, or if your DM is not good at knowing when somebody needs to level up, he can really, really bog things down. People do not want to be level 5 forever. People do not want to be level 4 forever. People want to level up. They want to feel like they're accomplishing things, and Milestone can really, really hamper that. And I think that's the biggest con you need to be aware of, is that players want to feel like they're doing something. They want to feel like they're progressing, and don't bog them down.
That kind of goes into the con of XP base, actual XP, because now the difference is the players know how far they have to go to get to that next level. They know how much it's going to take. The con is it can be a grind.
And the DM needs to know when to give something that's going to give them XP. And role playing experience is really important for that right there.
Role playing is very important. Unless you are running a purely combat focused game.
Tomb of Annihilation.
Yeah.
Into the Abyss. Like basically just dungeon run games. You don't have to worry about role playing XP all that often. You're just killing shit left and right.
But like if you have a really good mix of role playing and combat and stuff, you should get role playing experience as a DM, because if you're doing it that way, because I mean, to be honest, I don't mind players once they hit level 3, I don't mind them taking longer and longer to get to the next level, because I don't necessarily want them to advance too fast, but I want them to feel like at the end of every session they accomplished something, and they're getting closer to that next level.
Mm-hmm. So
they know how far away it is, but it's a slower and slower grind to the next level.
Yeah. All right. Kyle, you have any other questions for us?
So that wraps up that part of the show. We'll be moving on into our final segment. Like we said before at the beginning of this, we want this to be a more community-oriented show. Like we said before, this is supposed to kind of serve as more of a companion video series to what's going on in your daily dungeon. And so that way you can ask your questions, whether you're new to D&D, want to maybe you're interested in starting to DM. So if you have any kind of question for us, or specifically for Ian and Eric, I'm just the facilitator of this conversation. If you have questions for Ian and Eric, you can go over to ydnerd.com/contact and send us your questions. We'll shout you out and we'll answer your question here on the show. Make sure that you have the phrase D&D question in the first line. So that way we know that you're trying to send this question into this show and not the YDN cast, because I'm pretty sure the people on the YDN cast don't know about as much about D&D stuff as obviously Ian and Eric do. Again, go to ydnerd.com/contact. Obviously, this is our first episode, so we don't have any audience questions, so I came up with a question to kind of get the ball rolling on a topic that I thought was interesting, that's something that I've wondered about for a while. We've been on the subject of leveling and character levels, and I wanted to ask, how do you come up with challenges and encounters that are level appropriate for a party? That's something that I've thought about and wondered for a while, and I thought this would be a good first question since we're on the conversation of leveling.
If you don't mind, I'll take a crack at this first, Eric. And I guess really what I'm actually going to start off with is that Eric and I balance challenges differently. And it's going to be how every DM is that we balance things very differently. Eric compliments me on my combat very frequently because I am very rigorous with my combat. I will detail it to fit the party. I will detail it to not only fit the party, but challenge each and every individual class that exists within the party as well. I really enjoy making combat different each time. I don't like just having a plain 8x8 square, 4 bad guys and then 4 good guys, and then they just charge each other until they're dead. I like making it so that there's movement interactions, that there's different challenges that are beyond just rolling and attacking an enemy. I like there to be interesting events going on while you also fight. I don't know how Eric goes about combat per se, but I find that Eric does combat very similarly. He doesn't just, throw me on a board to fight things. Eric really likes ungridded combat.
Yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of it. For the sake of the actual podcast and for the show, I keep it off grid because you can't really imagine grid combat, and it's easier for me to describe what's going on without a grid. But when I use Roll20, and I'm not trying to bump Roll20 or anything like that, it's what I personally use. They don't sponsor us or anything, so don't get me off here. Don't get me wrong.
I mean, if they want to sponsor us, they can go to ydnerd.com/contact and with the subject line sponsor.
If you're wondering, Roll20, you can sponsor us, but you're awesome. But if you want to throw us that extra balance. Anyway.
Eric and I both use Roll20. He'll use it kind of just for references and for maps and things like that, for detail and stuff like that, and for the rolls really. But I'll get really into Roll20. I'll be very detailed with it. I'll go way out of my way to make something very detailed with a lot of stuff happening on the map and things like that. It's just how I am. Eric, would you like to add anything about and this is without talking about Monster Challengers. That's a whole nother ball game in a second.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. But when you're talking about I'm a personal fan of ungridded combat, and the reason I like combat is because if you think about any type of because we're playing in a fantasy world, it's medieval combat. It is hectic. It is chaotic. It's like if you ever watch those old medieval war movies and stuff, or King Arthur movies and big battles and stuff, it is messy. And it's best example, what was it? Game of Thrones, Battle of the Bastards. That fight, just super chaotic. There's stuff happening all the time, and most of the people who survived by pure luck. It's messy. So ungridded combat, it throws that extra wrench in the fire where it's I try to be as as descriptive as possible as far as where the enemies are, and the players may have to ask me like, where is this person? But I'm really good at keeping a mental map in my head, being like, yes, this is where everybody is, and this is how far away, and this is like, yeah, there's a carriage here. Here's the monster. Here's where I'm really good about that. But like, I like that kind of like uncertainty about where everything is. And it's kind of like, because in combat, like I said, it's messy. So, throwing that extra wrench in the fire, I personally like it. But there's also downfalls because if you are doing something, there have been times when I'm like, I can't do this without a grid because there's too many things to keep track of.
Mm-hmm.
But like I use the grid so I'm not hard set on it. So maybe I'll draw like the map of an area, and I won't put the monsters on it. I'll just be like, the monsters are around here, and we'll just kind of like, we'll still play it ungridded, but there's a map as a reference point as if the players are like, okay, I need a little bit more description. Am I here? Yes, you're there.
So I think what Kyle ultimately boils down to, and this is, I think, kind of oversimplifying it, but I think it's necessary, is that it's DM control over the situation versus player control. When you have a grid and you're actively using it a lot and you've got tokens on the grid, players have a lot of control over positioning, over forcing monsters into a certain position, over doing things, and the DM lets his players have a lot of control over combat.
Mm-hmm.
And I happen to actually really like that, because then I'm playing a game against my characters as well, and I let them kind of like toy around with the map I've made. I really like that. I like that it's almost like a versus mode, where D&D is not necessarily a versus game. It's not Dungeon Master versus players. It's a storytelling cooperative experience. The Dungeon Master's there just to act as a focus for the game. Combat can be that one moment where it is 1v4, 1v5, and you're not trying to necessarily kill your players, but you're trying to test them, trying to tax them, and you're trying to outsmart several people by being this super entity that can kind of test their abilities. And then ungridded is very much so, I control this. I decide the flow of combat. I decide what happens. I decide positioning and things like that. Players who are very descriptive and very, very careful about what they say can take advantage of the system as well. And I like that too.
Yeah. Now, another thing about it is, you mentioned like the DM control, and yeah, that like as a person who uses ungridded combat, I do have a lot more control over the map, and as far as where things are, and manipulating, the map in certain ways, and it can kind of put things in my favor at times. But I'm also the type of player who likes to let the players shine.
Mm-hmm.
So the players, like, I'm never one of those DMs, like, if the players come up with a plan, and it's a really good plan, something may go wrong, roll may be botched, whatever, but I actually try to do whatever I can to make their plans work out for them, unless they screwed up somewhere. And so, unless like I thought about that plan before they even, it's one of those things, like in my prep, like, did I plan for that? And if I didn't, then it's like, okay, to me, it's like they figured it out. It's like, I didn't think about that, so they kind of figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
I
think.
Yeah.
So we talked a lot about combat. Before we move away from combat, let's just briefly touch on challenge rating.
Yeah.
And monsters like that. I actually don't think there's very much to talk about challenge rating, mostly because it's very hit or miss, and you need to know your players. Like, you need to know what your group can handle, and that just comes with experience. Mm-hmm. Like some, and it's also completely random luck as well. I can throw. Here's the perfect example. of why challenge rating can be bullshit. I'll give you 2 examples, 2 separate examples. I had a level 21 shot 2 months ago. I put 4 or 5 players against the Tarask, the legendary unstoppable beast of a monster, challenge rating 30 against 4 players. And I told them what they'd be fighting. I told them, like, hey, we're doing a Tarask thing. Let's do it. Let's kill the Tarask. Let's actually do this. It was a shit show. That thing got obliterated. Like, it did not stand a chance.
Like 3 or 4 rounds.
In like 3 or 4 rounds, and it was ridiculous. Like the Paladin of like 400 points of damage.
Jesus.
The Wizard like 100 points of damage like in one go. It was crazy. It was like Eric was there. He can attest to it. It was very cool. It was very cool to see what level 20 characters are very capable of. I think that 3 Tarasks might have been more challenging.
Yeah. If it were like Tarask, it might have been more challenging. I mean, but like that challenge rating, like one of the greatest tools for new DMs to understand how challenging a monster can be to a certain level, but it is not a hard set thing. I think it's cool. Like
Eric, you're cutting in and out.
I'm cutting in and out.
Yeah.
So challenge ratings are something I reference back to, but I never go by it anymore. I don't think I use it for XP sometimes, but that's about it.
So to get sources on challenge ratings and to kind of get an idea of like what you want to work with, I would recommend the Monster Manual, which is going to be your primary source for monsters that you're going to be using to fight. And then I would recommend Volo's Guide to Monsters, which has even more monsters that added. I think the Soul Coast Adventure Guide might have them as well. I can't remember.
I don't think so, but you have tons of options when it comes to monsters and Volos. Now, yeah, maybe want to stay with a little bit, but I don't know about you, Ian, but my favorite thing to do is to make monsters.
Yeah, I agree, Eric. And to those of you who couldn't hear him, he's breaking up a little bit, but I caught the gist. Make your own monsters. As you get more experienced, as you get more capable of doing so, Kyle, what we do is we'll tailor creatures to a combat. We'll take something that actually doesn't exist on paper and turn it into something. The Drake you guys are going to be fighting, which we're not going to talk about what it could do yet, as it's a mild spoiler for those of you who haven't seen the next episode coming out this Friday.
Mm-hmm.
But this Drake that you guys are fighting, I pulled from Volos. It's in Volos. It's not in the Monster Manual.
Mm-hmm.
And then toyed around with it a good bit and made it something different. Made it behave it differently. I changed its size. I altered the way it worked, and I used some pre-existing abilities that I know are in the game and have, challenge ratings and have factors, and I added them to that monster. Like normal drakes aren't big enough to trample over enemies, but a large drake could,
Mm-hmm.
That's a big part of it. And without really belaboring the point too much more, it's all about experience. To those of you who are new DMs, it's a lot of trial and error.
Yeah.
You're gonna quote unquote break a few eggs, murder a couple of your characters, throwing something that's just too much. It will happen, and you should not feel bad. A lot of times players have the ability to run away and simply refuse to because they think it's a video game and that there's an answer, there's a solution. No. There will be plenty of engagements where you have to go like, fuck this, I'm running. What is my movement speed to run away?
Okay. And we can discuss. Am I still kind of breaking in now?
Nope.
And if we can discuss especially in future videos about how players should necessarily deal with certain types of combat situations. That would be a topic for video. But I mean, yeah, it's as a new DM, know your players, know what their strengths and weaknesses are. It is not a bad thing to play to your players' weaknesses, but have like give them plenty of opportunities to shine as well. Don't let it. I mean, depends on the type of DM you are, but I'm not a firm believer of player versus DM. We're all at the table, all playing the same game. It's a cooperative, even for the DM. And
Awesome.
yeah, that's my take on it.
My last thing before we go off this topic anyway is another place that you're going to find monsters and challenge ratings if you're running a campaign is going to be in campaign books like Curse of Strahd or so on and so forth. The back appendices of these books, I actually don't even know if I mentioned this to you, Kyle. You'll find characters and like miniature monster sheets for these characters back there. So a lot of the enemies and NPCs you'll fight will have predetermined stats and they're not randomly rolled at all. A lot of like main NPCs will have this, and encounters that are planned specifically in the campaigns are going to have predetermined challenge ratings for you. And Wizards is actually pretty good about doing that. I'll tell you this right now: we played, and Eric will remember this. We played Horde of the Dragon Queen about a year or two ago. I think it was almost 2 years ago.
Yeah.
There was a fight the players are specifically designed to lose to, and one of the players got murdered.
Damn.
He died because like they were specifically meant to lose, and he went down there and accepted a duel and died. And that's just, it's designed that way, and sometimes that's just how it is. The DM can determine not to let that happen, but sometimes it's for dramatic effect and to kind of put emphasis on like this is a real world that we're creating here. There are real consequences to losing a duel like this.
There are stakes involved in this.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes, like, getting attached to a character is great, right? Don't think that you're going to make it out of every combat alive. And that's how challenge rating works. Your DM determines how difficult things are. At the end of the day, you can take a challenge rating 20 monster, cut its health in half, make its AC like 10, and then it's suddenly not a level 20 monster anymore.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I think we're going to go ahead and leave that episode of DM tips and newbie tricks at that. Ian and Eric, thank you so much for joining me on this. If you like what we're doing here at Your Daily Nerd, please like, comment, subscribe, every other YouTube buzzword there is. Make sure if you're not able to watch a video version of the podcast, we completely understand. Head on over to iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, soon Spotify, to find audio-only versions of the podcast and subscribe there, and you'll be able to listen right as soon as it gets posted. Again, thank you guys for joining me on this, and until next time, we'll see you later.
And that's the way the news goes.